In this second part of our celebration of this wonderful James Bond film, we start by looking at the performance of Roger Moore. Sit back, relax, and listen to us waffle on about one of the greatest films ever made.
I think it could well be his best performance as Bond. I think he shows range. He does show the sort of that assurance and that steadiness and that coolness in the role. But he does showcase, some sort of more serious aspects and not darker, but, like I say, serious in tone, like when he's confronting Orlov in the train.
Yeah.
And also, when he's talking to Octopussy when they're exploring that, she's saying he was the one who kind of was sent after her father, and she respects the fact that Bond gave him the opportunity to actually take his own life rather than be, humiliated, etc. Which it's quite underrated that there is that bit of backstory.
Yeah, it is.
But they don't dwell on it. They don't keep coming back to it. Roger he's so good at being able to get chemistry with almost all his co-stars. So if you go right the way from the pre-title sequence, even with Bianca, I mean, I know you hardly say anything, but then into the scene with Moneypenny and Penelope Smallbone, then with M and the defense minister, and then Jim Fanning. He's got great chemistry with Jim Fanning. The auction scene is absolutely brilliant. What a brilliant idea. On the page or whatever, it might have thought, oh, is this going to be that interesting? How will that work? But then it just really comes across. It's absolutely brilliant. His chemistry with Magda, and then with the villains and everything. But with Octopussy and VJ and Q, absolutely just tremendous chemistry. And it's only he perhaps more than any other Bond actor is able to connect with his co-stars, I think.
Yeah, because the reaction to VJ's death is not one of wailing. It's, I'm still a professional, I've got to get on with this. Proper angry, but trying to hold it in. The look on Roger's face, because he's wet through, isn't he, from coming in the crocodile. The scene we've mentioned with Orlov, that is not mentioned enough for me by Bond fans. I think that the way John Glen sort of shoots it as well, the classic 1-2 setup where it gradually zooms in on the faces, and it's building and building to that moment with the whistle of the train. It's just so good. And then the guy comes in and then it starts off an amazing action sequence.
Leave that, let's go. Let's stay. Sit on that box, hands on your knees. Come on, move. Why is that bomb on the train?
Who are you?
I'm British Secret Service.
You should be more concerned about getting out of here alive.
I am more concerned about an atomic bomb exploding on a U.S. Air Force base. You surely can't be inviting a full-scale nuclear war. What happens when the U.S. retaliates?
Against whom?
Thank God, of course. Our early warning system will rule out the possibility of that bomb having been launched from Russia or anywhere else. Everyone will assume incorrectly that it was an American bomb triggered accidentally.
That would be the most plausible explanation.
Europe will insist on unilateral disarmament, leaving every border undefended for you to walk across at will. And it doesn't matter a damn to you, I suppose, that thousands of innocent people will be killed in that accident of yours.
Better than letting a handful of old men in Moscow bargain away our advantage in disarmament talks.
On your feet, General. You're going to stop that train.
It's too late.
You can stop it at the border.
For me, it's also talked about, but Stephen Burkoff. I think this is really probably the first time when you've had somebody else in the cast, not necessarily a main villain. He's a protagonist, he's part of that.
Yes, he is,
team.
Yeah.
But certainly, of course, Stephen Burkoff and Roger had worked together many times on the episodes of The Saint. Burkoff's in a couple of episodes of The Saint. So they would have known each other of old, and Stephen Burkoff had done some film leading up to this. But that year, of course, was his On the Strength of Octopussy, and then Beverly Hills Cop, which came out the following year. So the one sort of dovetailed the other. But the way in which he is such a really seriously powerful actor, playing, you know, and as somebody mentioned the phrase, which I love the phrase, eating the furniture, and he is. He's absolutely devouring every single sentence in that script. That shot of him in the set where he's on the committee and he's explaining to people, you know, and he's got the map and the wonderful Peter Lamont set that revolves around. He's magnificent. Everything he says, the slightest little thing, when he's talking to the jeweler. And you know, they're referring to the egg and the bits and pieces. Bang, the egg slams down, and his complete focus is on, you know, how important he is and how his plan is. Never mind all of this, I know what they're saying, but I'm going to be doing this. He's such an incredibly powerful character, and Bond with him ultimately in that train compartment is the moment that maybe the audience had been waiting for. You know, this guy's operating here, Bond's here. Are they ever going to find each other? Eventually they do, and they're in the same train compartment, which leads up to that extraordinary chase. That was fascinating. You've got Burkhoff in this picture, Louis Jourdain, who's just, you know, it doesn't matter what you throw at him, he's going to give you a fabulous performance. But Burkhoff is the linchpin, I think, in the picture for that real powerful rogue official, the army official. And of course, in A View to a Kill, you've then got Christopher Walken. All of a sudden, you've got this huge actor, you know, and so things just keep progressing as time goes on. I think he's a very important character in Octopussy, certainly for this meeting of minds between him and Bond.
I think it's almost like yin and yang with Kamal Khan and him. It's the Louis Jourdain just has this grace, and he's very slow, and he just takes his time. His entire performance, and then you've got Burkhoff like barking, you know, pointing at people, and you know. And I just love that these two, you know, completely different characters are just sort of, like you say, they're on the track to have a common cause, but they're not really. They've got their own stuff, haven't they? Yeah, exactly. They're in it for themselves and for how they're going to, you know, get out of this. And I that was one thing that really stood out. Is just how good Louis Jourdain is in this film. His performance he's just so classy and a great kind of foil to Burkhoff.
Well, I would have taken that double myself.
Then why don't you take over the major's position? Mr.
Bond. James Bond. Thank you, I'd be delighted.
100,000 rupees, then. 666. It was not such a good double to accept after all, was it?
Double.
Of course. You can only win with a 666. The stake is 200,000 rupees. Do you have the cash?
Well, I think that this should be ample security. Don't you?
Play, Mr. Bond. You need a great deal of luck to get out of this.
Oh, luck. Well, then I shall use player's privilege and use your lucky dice. It's all in the wrist. 666. Fancy that. 200,000 rupees. I prefer cash.
Get it cashed for him.
Yes, sir.
Spend the money quickly, Mr. Bond.
I intend to.
I think it's pretty original that clearly the main threat to, I don't know, the West or the world is Orlov. He's the one who, I've just started watching Jack Ryan's series 3, and the plot is not that dissimilar to what Orlov is wanting to do. Russian movement or, rogue element trying to destabilize the Iron Curtain or ex-Iron Curtain in order to weaken that, and then, the passage into the West almost. And so Orlov is the main antagonist in this. However, really, Kamal Khan would probably be the one that you said is the main villain in this film, in a sort of, by how much time and the sort of scenes that are devoted to him and the end confrontation and everything. But he's not evil, like, well, you wouldn't say he was like an evil, I don't know, megalomaniac or psychopath or something. He's just someone who does what he does, and is almost, he doesn't mind what happens with the whole atomic bomb or whatever, if that's what happens. But this is what I'm doing with the smuggling of the jewelry and everything. I'll enable these things to happen, but I don't actually do that bit. But if that happens, so be it.
It's a bit of a Hans Gruber type character, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
In the film itself, he's the thief. He's the guy that all he wants is he wants the currency, he wants the franc, he wants this, he wants that, and enabling that gives the bomb to be planted, etc., and then that is what will then trigger Orlov's dream for one side. So it's he's just even though he's the main villain, but he is, I think, a smaller cog in the wheel. His presence alone allows, again, this being a thief and being that sort of character and being a prince and is whisked into places. It's very similar to an undercover British Secret Service agent walking into a bar and somebody going, Mr. Bond, that sort of thing. It's a similar sort of thing played out on a bigger scale. But I think Orlov is a better villain if you're going to have a villain. I think I'd love to have seen a slight change of direction and maybe him being the main villain of the piece. But I think
it's interesting because they say he's the peril, isn't it? It's like that's he is the ticking time bomb, literally. While Kamal Khan, and that's where it sort of grounds it in that it's much more, it's a believable kind of, like say, it's a believable sort of antagonist to them, and with the whole kind of the forging jewelry, and it keeps it, it's just a really nice, and it kind of keeps it kind of personal without it being too kind of ridiculous, like they've known each other for years. There is a little bit, obviously, bit of that with Octopussy's father and stuff. But yeah, it is interesting that you wouldn't have thought that something like that would work, where you've got almost like two competing villains as such. The one who's actually causing the most trouble, that plot actually finishes before the film does.
Yes,
it's
right.
Kind of like he gets killed. The bomb stops, and then you realise, hang on a minute, there's still this and this to resolve, and it kind of brings you back down to more of a personal kind of. Of course,
effectively from a team heist perspective, because you've got Orlov doing one thing, you've got Khan, who is in cahoots with Octopussy. None of this is going to work without her circus being the big blind here that everybody's not seeing. They're operating it in plain sight so that everybody could see it, and in the meantime, all of this chaos is happening, and the coming across the border control, and they're taken off the train, and that's happening here. So there's a whole bunch of other bits and pieces going on. So I can see how people turn up and go, this is really complicated plot, because there is a lot happening at once,
And really, Octopussy is the one. Octopussy and Kamal Khan have more of the, antagonism and protagonist, if you know what I mean. She's the one who at the end says, where was Kamal going after the bomb's been, diffused or whatever, Where was Kamal going? Back to India, I think Magda says. So then that's what Octopussy does. She goes to confront him, and it's only because of that Bond goes to India. The main mission's been completed. So it's Octopussy and Kamal Khan who have the real kind of, I don't know, not rivalry, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, the relationship is quite. It's quite complicated and also quite different in the fact that, you know, Kamal Khan will go to Octopussy and say, this is what we should do, and she'd be like, no, we're not going to do that, and he would kind of respect that decision. I think obviously he would then go off and do whatever he wanted, but it was quite that dynamic is quite different. He sort of comes to her for, like, you know, for permission or advice. But obviously he's still got his own thing going on, and you don't really kind of, it's just a really interesting dynamic. And obviously there is that kind of like a certain revenge aspect to the end, isn't it? Where she can't let him get away with this. She's got to get him.
In terms of the henchmen, then there's quite a few of them here, aren't there? This film, we've got instantly, and you know, we've heard that John Glen was trying to get back David Lean, that very first scene of Great Expectations, where the boy is walking, then he bumps into that guy, and it's a proper shock. And with the clown, just the cold open, as they say, isn't it? Just the clown walking. We don't know what on earth is going on here, because you've seen one henchman chasing him, and then there's another of the same person who he bumps into. It's so good.
Yeah,
and then immediately, like, these are great characters.
You can still hear the circus noise.
Yes. You can.
As the camera comes up and then over the wall, and then you realise they're in this. It's very clever. It's a very clever opening, and it works terribly well.
The scene with 009, and we were talking before, this is actually the plot of the whole film. This is what the film hinges on, you know. So whilst it may only be one scene as such, it's actually one of the most important. And for me, as I was thinking about it, possibly the best post-title sequence in the series, like straight after the credit sequence. I mean,
with the airplane and the
Octopussy in itself, you've got this idea where you've just had this unbelievable acro star, like pre-title sequence. Bombastic, very OTT, very adventure based, and then you're going straight into East Berlin, and you've got a clown running, and the fear coming from you
over the wall. I love it.
It's unbelievable.
What his costume is.
So please just tell us how you came to get that role, how you prepared for it, because we just love to know.
I certainly owe Martin Grace, dear Martin. You know, think about him a lot still. He was on a recce with Bob Simmons because they got to a point where on this Neen Valley they were up and looking at this thing, and he said, "We've got to get the actor here. We've got a stunt double in the waterfall." Shit, so then we got another. And Martin said, "Hey, excuse me, John, but I know somebody who could do both the stunts and the acting." He said, "Sure?" He said, "Can he act?" Yeah, he can act. I promise you. He's a clown too in his real life. So that's how it happened. And John sort of remembered me from For Your Eyes Only, just that little bit when I look through the window and, you know, come out, pop over the fence, get the thing. Yeah. And when I was going, and I owe that to Martin. Yeah, so that was really down to Martin. And on the plane out to Berlin, there was the opening start of the filming for Octopussy. I think it was there. I think they started in Berlin. John Glen, suddenly I'm sitting there reading my card, you know, a bit left, always been left. And John Glen sat down next to me, and I thought, why isn't he up at the front? Why isn't he up at the front with the rest? And we started to talk. And he was starting to, he didn't know what I'd done. He just took Martin's word that I'd done a bit of acting in my time. Yeah, so I went to Berlin, and I just thought, I can do this. He explained the situation, so I just did it. You have to. It's stage acting. You have much more time to prepare. Sometimes too much time, and you know, you play. There was no background to this guy for me at that time. John let me have his sort of what I thought, and they seemed to like it. There was one thing I was with Michael Wilson, and I'd gone to the bar after the first day's filming. I'd seen the rushes, and it's what we call actors' paranoia when I was in it. I'm having a beer, and he came and Michael gave it, and he said, "You've seen the rushes, eh?" And I went, I had that, oh shit, are they that bad? And he did turn to me, Michael Wilson, he said, "Have you ever thought about acting?" And I said, Sometimes, yeah, I do. Yeah. Because they were pleased with them. I was surprised. You know, yeah, we always.
What's always struck not only us but many who have seen the film hundreds of times, as all of us have, but is your ability as an actor, as a performer, as a stunt performer, but also as an actor, to put on screen absolute fear, because you are running for your life as a character. You are running away from these two knife-wielding characters from the circus, and there's a moment where you hear a noise, you turn back, you run. The expression on your face is one of absolute fear. You are running for your life, and then the hat comes off, and then the balloon bursts, and other things.
Yeah.
Moments, just moments. I've often wondered if anybody else, maybe the initial idea was we must get an actor who can do this, and Martin's gone, well, hang on, I know somebody who can not only do this but can do that. You know, so you combine the two together. Yes. I've always wondered if it may not have worked with anybody else, and I think that's the massive strength that you had.
Yes,
be able to deliver not only the physicality of the whole thing, but the emotion of the whole thing as well. It's very powerful.
Well, thank you, John. That's a very nice thing to say.
I think one aspect that gets me is the actual clown shoes, and what it is with that is that they look silly, but they somehow add to the horror. Because
you're absolutely right, because you don't have time. It's like wearing high heels. I do that a lot. But you know, to move in them is quite something.
Precisely.
Very difficult. I wasn't sure about the fight, but in fact, it's sort of clown, and with the beats, it sort of works with the big shoes and the knee up. You know,
yes,
it was all a bit, how can I say, 70s type. But Bob is, you know, do it different now. It's not, but it has a style.
It's quite nightmarish, isn't it? It's like like nightmares you have where you can't climb the stairs or you can't run fast enough.
Absolutely.
It is one of those interesting things, because throw a stick, you'll hit half a dozen people who really can't stand clowns. There's something about clowns that appeals to a generation of people, and then when they get older, they go, "Oh, do you know, clowns? I can really do without them." I think Stephen King's had an awful lot to do with that, and that hasn't helped. But the basis of the clown, and then not only being the clown, but also being the victim in this situation as well. It's very, very cleverly done.
It really is.
Well, thank you.
One of the, in my opinion, and I think we all agree, very unfair criticisms of Octopussy is sometimes Roger Moore in a clown suit and all the rest of it. But the clown aspect, I mean, it was David and Tony Meyer who brought up the twinning aspect of 009 and Roger, both as clowns. But you can't tell in those which one's you. You can't tell which one is your replacement, and you can't.
It's only at the end. Every scene I did, except the last day's film, and that's the sad thing for me. I'm really upset by that. But hey, it happened.
And you can't tell that it's Roger Moore when he gets in. You all look the same, and and that's the point. As a secret agent, you should
blend in. Is it?
That's it. It's
don't go into his tent.
I mean, I've got to say this just for our viewers. Is there a piece of clothing that you might have got with you that you could show people? Is that
just
the
piece of clothing?
The moment where you are hit in the back and you fall back into the water. That was what, 12 or 15, 16 feet, something like that. But you were taken away with the current quite a lot. It was a fair old turn.
I was surprised seeing it the other weekend when we were back to the 40th anniversary, and I thought, wow, this is quite rapid.
I can't remember whether you wore a pad or not. Did you have you had a wetsuit underneath?
I just because we weren't sure of the depth. I hadn't been in to sort of really recce at first,
right?
But I knew if you flat the water, you don't go any depth. And I think I did wear a wetsuit because Martin suggested I get one, and I hadn't. I always I winter swim still. In Christmas Day, I go and bonds anywhere in the world. I hope to have a swim outdoors Christmas Day. I shower outside. My whole
brave
family.
Boy, that's what you are.
No.
Catch me, baby.
I remember Arthur saying, coming back the next day, and saying, "We've seen the rushes; they're really good. We've got that wonderful reflection of the light on the daggers."
Yeah.
And then he looked at my face and said, and of course you look terrific in it.
It's
what
amazing.
about me? That does register quite well, does it? I mean,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, Harry, you were showing your kids yesterday this,
I was
weren't
going to say, I was showing my daughter it yesterday, and it completely took her by surprise. And also all kinds of questions like, "But wait, but what? He was over there, but now he's here, and why is he as a clown? Where's he going?" There's so many questions. But that's for anyone watching. It's there's just people pursuing one person pursuing another, but so many questions coming. Yeah. So it's a brilliant scene you're part of.
Guests have arrived, Ambassador.
We should go, my dear.
The whole clown outfit works terribly well. I know it's generational changes in the direction in which people don't like the picture, in a clown suit. Well, it's just look where he is. Who's going to you want to look like everybody else? Okay, well, you do this, Makes a great deal of sense, I think, long term.
Stay tuned for the next part of our Octopussy 40th anniversary celebration.